And that means Crowdsource the Truth viewers are ready to hear what Larry Nichols knows. And today, Larry, we're going to be talking about the Barr indictments. You know why we haven't seen them yet, and everybody watching wants to know the same. How are you, Larry?
Well, I'm hanging in. You know, Jason, today's program, as far as information, important information, is probably going to be one of the biggest I've ever done, period.
Wow.
Because the things I'm going to give you, or things I'm going to tell, or we're going to talk about, are things that are going to have a direct impact on what's coming in the days, weeks, and months to follow. So, with that little build-up, if anybody's listening and they know somebody that might not be listening, you might want to get a hold of them and tell them to listen in today.
Yes. Now, before we begin, Larry, I just want to remind everyone that, each week when you come on the show, we seem to have, sometimes even thousands of listeners. And I want to be sure that the people who are listening and watching today are aware that they can help you, they can support you, they can support independent media by going to your website at nicholslive.com. People can use your PayPal email address, which is nicholslive@aol.com, to send some financial support Larry's way, and it's critically important. I don't pay Larry. There's nobody sponsoring this show that pays Larry. Larry is supported by the viewers and the listeners, so please go over to paypal.com and using nicholslive@aol.com, send Larry $5, $10. If you're rich, send him $100, but let's send Larry some love. You can also stick some money, just put some cash in an envelope, put a forever stamp on there and mail it to Conway, Arkansas. Larry, what's this breakthrough information that you're going to share with us today?
Well, part of it, Jason, let's start with Barr.
Yeah.
I've tried to convince your audience in this deluge of rumors and things that have come out about Barr. Is he in? Is he out? Is he deep state? Is he not? Is he going to indict? Is he not going to indict? Et cetera, et cetera. And I've tried to be consistent all the way, telling you strictly the things that I know, many of which I've been involved with. But this weekend, Barr made a speech. And folks, this speech was probably as telling a maneuver as you're ever going to get from William Barr. Now, I've known him for many, many, many years. Many years. And I can tell you this speech is directly his normal way of being. He doesn't do this very often. But essentially what he did, I don't know if you've got the speech pulled up where you could read a few of the lines that he said. But he was basically, folks, he was talking about a resistance. And he was saying that there is, or was, or is a resistance inside our government to this president, to this administration. Now, if you know anything about him, if you look him up, whatever you want to do, you would know that man, certainly in such an important case as this, would not dare to use that kind of language, provocative, I guess would be the word, language, unless he knew something he was holding to substantiate it. Have you pulled it up yet, Jason?
Yeah, I'm looking at an article here in the Washington Post, Larry, that tells us that Attorney General William P. Barr accused Democrats on Friday of using their over-sabotage the executive branch and criticizing the resistance to President Trump. And, just from listening to it myself, he went into some great detail about the creation of the country, the Constitution. I mean, he's the only guy that I'm aware of who's served two terms as the Attorney General in the 90s and now. He obviously knows quite a bit about the branches of government, what the responsibilities are, and he spoke about how the concepts were being distorted and that a strong executive branch was necessary for decisive decision making, et cetera, and that this was weakening the executive branch and hurting the country.
Yes. And he talked about, he compared the resistance to something, I can't remember, my mind just went blank.
The fact of the matter is that in waging a scorched earth, no holds bar war of resistance against the administration, it is the left that is engaged in the systematic shredding of norms and the undermining of the rule of law.
Yes. Now, folks, I'm telling you, when you know William Barr, when you know him, this is outside of his normal speak. Believe me, way outside. And for him to break off at such a sensitive time, Jason, with polarization, Democrats, Republicans, everybody against each other, at a time like this, for him to come out and make such comments about the Democrats, that's just unheard of. Unheard of. Now, it probably will hurt the president. I promise you, and it probably will hurt him. In that, Democrats are already claiming he's a puppet of President Trump, and he's just going to do everything to cover up President Trump. The timing of these hearings was done specifically to shout down the value of the FISA IG report, which is coming.
Right.
I know about that as well. So very few things happen in Washington by accident. They just don't, or by rote. They just don't work that way. So this is a serious statement, and I promise you, folks, William Barr, as far as I know, as far as everything I've been involved with, it has been said to me, not by him directly, I hate to be that way since all this hearing stuff about people saying somebody told them, but anyway, he has made it quite clear that he can't not prosecute from this case. He can't. There's no way he could stand flat-footed on the Constitution, on jurisprudence, and not prosecute out of what he has been able to discover and uncover through his investigation. And he's absolutely right. In the interest simply of the Democrats wanting to destroy Donald Trump. That's it. Just to destroy Donald Trump. Prevent him from getting reelected. They are pulling this entire maneuver, this entire charade of these impeachment inquiry hearings, all of this stuff. There's not a legal reality to anything they're doing.
Yeah.
But it is being effective. I'll talk about that later. But so he's coming out and trying to warn as best he can, in my opinion. He's trying to warn all of us. Be calm. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he has. And more importantly, he knows the environment he's in.
Right.
You know, Jason, I'm going to give a little bit of information. The jury pool for the D.C. District Court was surveyed. 92% the jury pool in the D.C. District Court is anti-Trump. So for anybody to believe, and I'm using a hypothetical here, let's say he indicts Comey. Why would anybody believe that he would get a guilty verdict out of a jury pool that's 92% against Trump?
Right.
Why would anybody believe that? Now, then he's got the other situation. Well, what about the Southern District of New York? Well, Comey's daughter is an assistant prosecutor there. And I would imagine the jury pool, I have not seen the stats on it, but I'm sure the jury pool there may not be 92%, but it's not going to be far off.
Mm-hmm.
So here you've got potentially legal grounds, which is one of the reasons the survey was conducted, to, maybe I shouldn't have said that, but anyway, you've got legal grounds for a change of venue. So everybody says, well, great, change venues. Tell Barr, change venues. Just move it out of there. Well, there's two steps in changing venue. Number one, you've got to have justification for a change, which he may have with the jury situation, potential situation. But then, Jason, you got to move it to another court.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the problem there becomes, how do you know that the court in D.C. or New York, if they do allow a change of venue, why would you not believe they would cherry pick the next venue to be about the same?
Right.
I mean, the whole exercise of change of venue is to try to get a fair, non-biased court. That's what it's all about.
Right. When it's
You got a little
applied
card behind
legitimately.
there.
Yeah.
Right. And listen, guys, everything in your life and mine, Jason, and all the listeners, our lives are on the line on this move right here. We get the wrong court. It doesn't matter what the evidence is. It matters not.
See, this is
The
important,
people
Larry.
that need to be prosecuted will walk.
Right.
I'm sorry?
This is an important conversation to have, because I myself have been really perplexed. Like, why are they not prosecuting? But I mean, you're really tapping into it here, and that's why I've titled this episode "Larry Nichols Knows Why Barr Indictments Haven't Arrived Yet," because we're talking about the strategy of law. The law is not a binary, black or white kind of a thing. There's a lot of gray area there. And, a lot of people were upset about a show we did yesterday talking about Roger Stone's recent conviction. And I agree, Roger Stone was wrongly targeted. Roger Stone was unfairly treated. I think the FBI kicking in his door with SWAT teams was absolutely ridiculous. He's a non-violent guy who's never done any violent crime in his life. They could have knocked on his door with one guy with a business card and gotten the same result. But at the same time, there's complications with how everything played out in court, how his lawyers acted, how the jury responded, how the judge responded. So it's not just a matter of doing things by the letter of the law. This is literally the poker game where Barr knows the game, knows the strategy, knows what cards he has, but there's all these other aspects involved.
Years ago, two people taught me law. Two. One, of course, was Hillary. Oh, she did a wonderful job of teaching me the dark side of the courtroom. Wonderful job. And it's paid off. I'll tell you, it's paid off.
Right.
The Prop B, that's all I'll call him, taught me one thing early on. He pointed out to me, do you know what the most critical foundation of law is? And I said, well, Lady Justice is blind, right? Isn't that what it is? He said, no. He said, when you get into selective prosecution, which therefore becomes selective persecution,
Right.
you have no law. Now think about what I just told you, Jason.
Yeah.
Selective prosecution, which leads to selective persecution.
But that's not a
Now, we can
real
see-
thing. Wait, Larry, selective prosecution, it's not a legal term. We're talking about they're prosecuting Roger Stone, they're not prosecuting Hillary Clinton. That's selective prosecution, right?
Yes, well, the fact that in the old days, 40 years ago or so, it was a justifiable defense. If you come in and Hillary burned her computer and all the records,
Yeah.
and Stone, in this example, burned all of his records, and he got prosecuted, and you have evidence and proof that Hillary did the same thing, you could get the case thrown out because they did not prosecute Hillary.
Back in the
You
day.
can't do that.
Yeah.
Back in the day, that was
Well,
the
what
way it was
stopped it?
supposed to be. It
What
had to be
changed
equity.
What changed that
The
stopped that?
the Clintons and the progressives and the effort to turn us into a socialist country. You see, this is communism.
Yeah.
This is communism when two people can do the exact same thing, and since one's a part of the clique, you know, one of the elitists, that one don't get prosecuted, but if you dare do it over there and you're just an everyday person,
Right.
you're going to get hung.
Right.
That changed. That changed it. Now I understand and see every day what Prop B was telling me. Every day I see it. You can't say we have law. You can't. You know, you hear them refer to, what is it they call, two-tier prosecution. You can't have that. We do, but you're not supposed to. It destroys everything, Jason. Everything.
Forgive this ignorant question, but what is Prop B? Proposition B, I guess?
He was a law professor that helped me.
Oh. What's his name?
Well, I call him Prop B. Everybody called him Prop B.
Oh.
He was a legitimate law professor at a major university and a friend of mine.
Got it.
And he knew when I broke off from the Clintons, I was in legal trouble. And he told me I would never get legal counsel because any lawyer that I got that would represent me against the Clintons and the mob and the Stevenses
Yeah.
would either be on the take with them, claiming they're helping me, but they're really trying to destroy me.
Or on the slab.
Yeah. So anyway, I had to learn law to defend myself, which I did in my federal case where the Clintons came after me, and it ended up I won, and the two prosecutors that went after me, federal prosecutors, I put them in jail 24 months each.
Wow.
Just on the tips that I got from Prop B and, believe it or not, Hillary. The biggest one she always told me, which y'all will recognize, Hillary warned me, you ever go to court, you ever go to court, you know who the only person is that's not lying in that courtroom? And I go, no, who? The fool. Everybody else lies. Judges lie, lawyers lie, prosecutors lie, everybody lies. Think I'm going to have a lie to get in there with them.
Now, Larry,
And
there's this book here. Is this about you, the Larry Nichols story, Damage Control?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize that. But somebody else
It
wrote
was
it.
written by a guy named Dave Bresnahan. He wrote it, sold thousands and thousands. I never got a cent. He beat me out of all of it, but you know, whatever. I'm a fool. But yes, that was about me. But anyway, she taught me that, and she taught me one other thing. When you're on the witness stand, always remember, if you get caught lying, you'll be guilty of perjury. You'll be put in jail.
5 years.
Well, how do you handle that if you need to lie? Because I tell her, well, what if I got to lie? You know, that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. She said, when you get in court on the witness stand, you just can't remember.
Right.
You see, they can prove what you can or cannot remember. They can be mad at you. They can jump up and down and scream, but they can't prove what someone can or can't remember. And that's like Hillary when she testified in the Whitewater hearings in Washington 270-something times. She said she couldn't remember. Now, she could remember everything going up to it by the second, but then there would be a 5-second interlude, and she couldn't remember that, and then she could remember everything after. It was a joke. It was so obvious.
Yeah.
Going on today. So this is the world that law has become.
Right.
And this hearing, the hearing's got to make up its mind. You know, you and I have talked about it. Is it about historical rules or is it about the rule of law? So what Schiff has done is he mixes the two together, and that's why the hearings are absolutely unfair, and that's why nobody should be testifying that's a supporter of Trump. Because you're not going to get a fair shake. Nothing you're going to say is going to be taken correctly, and you just shouldn't go. This hearing, folks, is a farce.
Absolutely.
And here's the bad news. The polling's in, reasonably accurate polling, and it's scary, Jason. Scares me to death. Scares the administration to death as well. When asked the question, and I'm paraphrasing the question, do you believe the hearings into the impeachment of the president should continue? 51% of the people said yes. 19% said no.
That's
and then
crazy.
something like 25% said they didn't know enough to make a decision.
At least they're being honest.
Now,
I think a lot of people don't know enough, because how could, that boggles the mind, Larry.
Well, how can that happen? Well, you're seeing, folks, what we've tried to warn, both Jason and I, the impact of controlling the national media. I'll bet you 98% of the people that are going to vote November 2020, 98% of the people that are going to vote that day will get 100%, Jason, of that which they assume to be all the national news they need to know to make such a decision.
Right.
You know where they'll get it?
News, TV.
TV, 6 and 10 o'clock evening news locally. And when you break down the 6 and 10 o'clock evening news locally, that means 4 to 7 minutes at 6, and usually the same 4 to 7 minutes at 10. That's all there is. And that's fed to these local networks or these local stations by ABC, NBC, CBS.
Larry, some of our viewers who are joining us in the chat on Periscope are saying they don't believe the poll. It's a fair thing to question it. Who conducted that poll? Where can we see it?
That poll, the one I'm referring to, is a survey, and I'm not going to tell you anything other than it was an internal. It was not a poll conducted by some professional polling group.
Got it.
But it's legitimate enough, folks. It's legitimate enough to scare the bejesus out of me.
Now, Larry, I think there's one thing. People know there's certain things that you can't. I mean, everybody's got things that they can't exactly talk about, and there's things that you tell me, and there's things that you don't tell me. There's a lot of people who, rightfully so, being skeptical is good. People should be thinking critically and questioning everything. There are some people who question what you're telling us. And I want to remind everybody, Larry has told us, and he's made reference to, recorded events, things to do with that guy, what's his name, Hull, and all of your involvement in the activities after Iran-Contra. Is it fair to say, Larry, or fair to ask, can you answer, at any point in your life have you had direct contact with William Barr, who we've been told used the name Robert Johnson in dealings with Iran?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I mean, years ago, I considered us friends.
Ah,
yes.
Wow. Friends.
And guys, to be honest, I don't care whether y'all believe me or not. What I do ask, and I'm simply asking humbly, look at my record of things I have told you. And I've told y'all things in the past right here with Jason. And I would bet, Jason, pound for pound, while I'm not a prophet, I'm not a soothsayer, I don't read the cards, pound for pound, I'll bet you that the things I have told you that were going to occur have happened pound for pound more than anybody else has ever had.
Well, there's definitely things that you've said that when you said them, I was like, that sounds outrageous. How could that possibly be true? The first one that comes to mind is the reparations. And a matter of fact, when you and I first started doing the regular show, Larry, that was one of the first topics you brought up. And I remember thinking it seemed out of left field and sort of, I was just dubious of it. Not that I didn't trust you, I just felt it was an analysis that you made that maybe wouldn't be correct. But sure enough, Jesse Smollett And right after that happened, what's his name from Newark? What's his name? Cory Booker and Kamala Harris started in with the reparations. You were right.
Plus, if you'll recall, any of you that ever listened to Alex Jones, right after President Trump won his election, before he ever took office, I was telling on Alex Jones, he has recordings of it for you to listen to, recorded, go back to the past programs, and I told that they were going to impeach him. Now, this was so preposterous because he hadn't even taken office. Yet now you know that the quote-unquote whistleblower's attorney wrote a thing 3 days after the man took office,
Right.
saying that what?
Impeachment.
I mean, I told Alex it was a coup, and I called it a coup. I called it a coup on Alex Jones before he ever took office. And his attorney did what? Sent out an email to somebody when he said the coup was on.
Yep. I've been getting a lot of
And he also
emails from people, Larry, who were excited to see you back on InfoWars just the other day.
I did, went back. I think it was a big part because of things I had said here with you,
Great.
because he asked specifically about a couple of things that we had talked about that nobody else had.
Huh. Interesting.
But
That's
anyway,
good.
so to the people that don't believe me, I can't help you. I truly cannot. As a matter of fact, I would ask you all, don't believe me. Don't believe me. I'm a liar, a cheat, a scumbag. I'm everything you never want your children to grow up to be.
You've been
But
nice
I
to
do
me.
ask you to do one thing. I'm sorry?
You've been nice to me. I like you, Larry.
I do ask this, Jason. If you're going to make me prove what I say, then do that to everybody else as well.
Right.
It's not fair. So please, folks, I'm telling you these things as a warning. I get nothing for telling you this. There's not a one of you that's got to send a penny to me or a penny to Jason, his program. You don't have to. I gain nothing by telling you this stuff, except putting my neck out on the line. Because obviously anybody that stands up against this coup is in jeopardy. I know the jeopardy I'm in with the things I say, and I have to be ungodly careful with what I say because of commitments, Jason, I have made to people I work with. I will keep my word to them. I will not release things that they ask me not to say. Now, I will skirt and get out as much as I can. You know that. But at the same time, I will not violate that.
Yeah. Larry, I know you've answered this before, but I can't remember the answer, and people ask me this constantly. They always say, how is Larry Nichols still alive? And I mean, I think they're talking about the revelations that you make, not your ongoing health problems.
Well, one thing is I'm not a normal person, meaning that I was with the other side for years and years, guys. I know how they work. I know what they do. So I've got a little advantage over an average guy that just comes out all of a sudden and says something. I've been through it. And the other thing that I did on purpose that has kept me alive, and had I not have done it, you wouldn't have me around anymore. I knew, or I thought, or I hoped that if I went public, that if something happened to me, they would have a tough time explaining that accident. Plus, I left information scattered around the country to specific people to prove everything I've ever said. And they always had to run the risk, which I reminded them every chance I got, that I would probably be a bigger detriment in death than I would be in life.
You know, Larry, there's a very good message here from Thomas Tyson, who's a frequent contributor in the chat. He's saying that there's certain things that he feels he knows about John Hull and the Iran-Contras that are not congruent with things that you've said, but He says he doesn't feel that you're being dishonest. He recognizes that it was a compartmentalized operation, and there could be
Right.
disinformation going on even within that.
Well, he would certainly know, or at least I hope you know, that person, that in that racket, you knew just what you were supposed to know. You were involved with what you were involved with. And there were tons of things that went on in Nicaragua that I had nothing to do with, and I don't claim I knew it all.
Right.
I just know the part I was involved in.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I did.
Right. We've also
If
got
that person has that knowledge, he knows that he's right. I guess you would call it compartmentalization. I mean, you were given what you do, and that's it. You know, people ask me all the time, do you remember this name? Hey, the people I was running with, if I remembered their name, it wouldn't do anybody any good because nobody used their name.
Right. And Larry, we've got a friend of ours from Philadelphia watching. The boy 26 wants to know if you have any idea where Ed Klein is, or if there's a reason why he went dark. He had a book in 2017 that was the best firsthand source on the plot against Trump and the spying on him. Do you know Ed Klein, Larry?
I really, no, you bet I know that. Ed and I used to take Ed around when I was doing the talk show circuit, and I would take him around to all my hosts. He and I would go on and promote his latest book or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I have not talked to Ed. I'm glad you brought him up. I have not talked to him in months and months, so I need to. I know when his wife died, he was incredibly hurt.
Right.
He still went ahead and came out with his last book, but I do not know why he's not active anymore, but I will find out, and I'll let you know the next program if somebody will remind me.
Great.
But he's a wonderful guy, and if there's ever been an investigative journalist, book writer, or whatever you want to call him, it's Ed Klein. He's great. The next thing I want to talk about is San Francisco.
Yes.
You know, folks, I have tried to warn that I found out, this is not something that I'm thinking or wishing or hoping or dreaming up. George Soros has started an effort nationwide to find pliable prosecutors, sheriffs, and judges in smaller markets all over this country. Smaller markets, pliable meaning people that would be manipulated within reason. Now, why is he doing that? Because he knows the same thing I do, Jason, that in a race when a president's running, especially going to be a highly contested, publicized race, down ballot tickets have no access to money. So when your Republican Party or your Democratic Party in your area raises money, they raise it and they give it to the candidate for president, generally, most of it. And when you get down to races like prosecutors, county sheriffs, judges, etc., there's virtually no money for them coming nationally. They get nothing, maybe $500 from the party.
Huh.
So you can go into a race like that in, say, an area with a population of, let's say, under 50,000, in a race for county prosecutor or city district attorney or whatever. You can go into a race like that, Jason, with $5,000 and literally bury your opposition because they won't have $1,800.
Well, how does
maybe
that,
$2,000, maybe $25,000.
Money directly correspond to votes, Larry? Because it seems like it's such an insignificant amount. $5,000 isn't going to buy TV ads or stuff like that. How does that small amount make a difference?
Well, because you can use it in, for example, if you're in Conway, Arkansas, which we're close to Little Rock, you're not going to buy television because if you try to buy television, you got to buy it in the Little Rock market, and your cost per thousand would be out of this world. So the only TV you can buy in Conway is cable TV on your local cable company here. Those spots run anywhere from $25, $75, maybe $100 a spot.
Wow, that's cheap.
Now, for that $25, $75, or $100 a spot, it runs on every channel. runs on the Food Network, sports networks, etc. So you see, it doesn't cost a lot of money. Not a lot. But you still have to have money to run. Yard signs, believe it or not, that's a big thing in local races. When every time you turn around, because remember, they're going in to vote for the president. They're going in to vote for president. They don't even know who's running for prosecutor. Good
But if
God,
it's a name they've seen before on everybody's lawn, they're like, oh, I've heard of that guy, I'll vote for him.
Yeah, when they get in there flipping switches, they see a name that kind of sounds familiar, they flip that switch.
Yeah.
So
that's why
folks,
I've always thought,
you,
Larry, if I was to run for office, I think I'd have a good advantage because people would go in there, maybe know nothing about me, and see the name Goodman, and they'd say, oh, I'll vote for that.
That's right. You're exactly right. That's why in politics you hear the saying over and over, you know, even bad press is good press. Because if you're smart, you've been in the press, even if it's bad, if you wait long enough, you can run for office, and people won't even remember why they heard your name, but they've heard your name, so they'll flip the switch. It's crazy, but that's how disinterested people are in down ballot tickets. They really are. Mm-hmm. So they're going in. Now, another example of Soros and this effort was San Francisco. We've researched and found out how that little trick happened. You know, it didn't make sense to me, Jason. What made me get involved and try to dig it out, what made me get involved was this race is an oddball race, right? So you know turnout's going to be minuscule. And then you've got all these businesses that their business is being trashed because they're these street people setting up tents in their front door. It's got to be killing the businesses. So you would think that they would come out en masse, right, to stop somebody that supported that kind of activity, especially somebody that supported changing the law from $750 or less as a misdemeanor, not a felony, to $1,500. Especially somebody that lets urinating on the street be legal. Come on. But it
Larry,
didn't work, did it?
It was, I hadn't heard about this guy, Chesa Bowden, until you told me about him last week on the show. And I've become very intrigued by this because a lot of people today don't know. I didn't know about the Weather Underground and Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn. But I mean, this guy is literally the child of the Weather Underground, grew up since birth in this radicalized leftist Marxist. This is a dangerous character, and you know, part of the reason why this is important with regard to why these indictments haven't come down is, as you're saying, this is a really below the radar election. I had no idea there was an election going on in San Francisco. Certainly never heard of this guy. A lot of people never heard of the Weather Underground. So they just sort of slipped this card into the deck. But in terms of stacking the deck, the legal deck in their favor, the more people like this you have, and San Francisco is a major city, it's not a minor city. If you want to start prosecuting politicians in San Francisco, you've got this guy in there. That's kind of a big deal.
It is indeed. And still in all, I had trouble figuring out how this guy could get elected. Well, there were two factors. Number one, who he really was, who he really is. Guess what? The mainstream media didn't tell people.
Right.
So if you lived in San Francisco, likely as not, as they normally do with candidates that are running, right, they can tell you the size of their underwear.
Right.
In this case, they didn't tell this stuff to the people. They didn't tell it. Everybody was about as shocked, I'm told, when he won, and then they started hearing all this other. They were shocked.
His mother went to prison when he was 14 months old, Larry.
Still is in prison, and he was raised by, what's his name?
Bill Ayers and Bernardine Dorn.
Yeah. But that's still not the reason he won. The reason he won was because George Soros, through two of his satellite organizations, paid these street people if they would go vote for him. Some got $25. I'm understanding some got 75, and some, I guess, that were even hard to hold on to, got 100. But they paid homeless people to go vote. Now, when you think about in San Francisco, I think the total was somewhere around 60-something thousand homeless people, maybe greater than that.
Wow.
You know, that size block of voters, Jason, would absolutely win in a low turnout race. Absolutely. It would shift the scales to where that person would win.
Mm-hmm.
So he did.
Wow.
Now look what San Francisco's got.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's a lot of articles I'm finding on independent blogs about this. There's something called Mission Local, which I guess is local news for a global city, and it's quoting that the last good Batman movie. He's saying some men just want to watch the world burn, and then it shows Batman standing there with the bat signal being this dude's face. And I haven't read the article, but his difficult balancing act has already begun, apparently. The police union hates this guy because his parents wanted to kill the police, and now he's the district attorney.
Right.
That makes no sense.
It doesn't look like the fruit has fallen far from the tree either.
Right. Makes no sense.
I mean,
Larry.
can you imagine living in a town, Jason, and being a business owner when people can come in your store and shoplift up to $1,500 worth of merchandise and be prosecuted only as a misdemeanor? Are
Wow.
you kidding me?
Wow. I mean, that's basically instructing people to steal stuff, isn't it?
You might as well tell them to steal, because that's what you did. Come to San Francisco, and anything you want, you can go in and get. You know, I don't see how the 7-Eleven type stores can even stay open, because why wouldn't people just come in and take Twinkies or whatever they want and walk out with them?
Yeah.
There's no penalty.
You know, it's interesting. When I was looking for some images to show today during the show, I was looking into this homeless problem, just, you know, Googling around, and there's an organization that came together of local business owners, because this homeless problem is growing and it's a huge problem, and they basically lobbied the lawmakers to put in a law. I don't know if it's passed. I'm looking for it here. They wanted to tax businesses in San Francisco that earn more than $25 million a year, something like 0.5%, specifically to offset the homeless problem. And although I'm not a huge fan of increasing taxes, this kind of made sense, because having such a debilitating homeless problem that affects the, just the, what's the word I'm looking for? The living in the city. The quality of life. It affects the quality of life for everyone when there's sick people and dying people and starving people and people defecating in the street. It brings down the overall quality of life for everyone in the city. So the most prosperous, particularly businesses rather than individuals, it makes sense to tax them and give back to the community in a way that can help these people. The proposed plan was going to more than double the city's budget for homeless services, and it went into some detail as to how this could help resolve the problem. That seemed like a very good idea to me.
Well, it is, except for one thing.
What?
Many of the homeless people, they're not going to go in a shelter. They're not. You know, you got to realize a lot of I don't spend too much more time on it, but you got to realize a lot of the homeless people are mentally off or drugged up so that they're not living in a world of reason. They're not. And they think if you put them in a shelter, oh, God, all of a sudden we don't get our drugs. You know? Yeah.
Well, but even so,
now,
they need money to deal with these things, Larry, even if it's having people who are in the police who are helping to coordinate and organize. There's going to be some percentage of homeless people who are honest, well-meaning people who are down on their luck, who, if given a shelter and an opportunity to work somewhere, could get back on their feet. So it seemed like a good idea. I brought it up because I contrast it to this Weather Underground dude becoming the district attorney, which seems like a plan to drive the city further into chaos rather than try to bring the...
That was what I was fixing to say.
Yeah.
You know, you're not going to solve that problem by making it legal for them to do it, because then the true property owners, the people trying to do right, have no recourse. I mean, what are you going to do, Jason, if a homeless group sits in front of your home or apartment complex and set up there, defecate in the street, urinate in the street right in front of your doorway, shoot drugs right in front of your doorway, and then you're told by the police you can't do anything to them?
Right.
What does that do? What does that do to your kids? What does it do to your world? The world's crazy.
Yeah, and that's what I mean by reducing the overall quality of life.
Yeah, now the next thing I want to bring up is the race for governor in Louisiana. This scares me tremendously. As it turns out, President Trump, you all know, went to Louisiana 3 times, maybe 4, I know 3, to try to rally for the Republican. The Democrat ends up winning. Well, once again, I'm thinking, come on, I need to look in it. Well, when I look into it, I find a very scary thing out.
What's that?
Of the registered Democrats to vote in Louisiana, 48% voted. Registered Democrats, 48% of the registered Democrats turned out and voted. Of the registered Republicans in Louisiana, only 31% showed up to vote. Had the registered Republicans, if 38% of the registered Republicans had gone to the trouble to vote, the Republican would have won by a couple of thousand votes. Now, what's scary about that? I don't live in Louisiana. You don't. Many of our listeners don't. But what is scary is that's the trend, Jason, I worry about for the presidential race. Right. I've warned this audience and anybody I talk to. The formula for this race is different than any we've had in the past. This is not a 40-40-20 election. This is probably a 50-50 or a 48-48% election. Now, by that, I mean in all elections, normally the formula you go by is 40% love one candidate, hate the other, 40% love the other candidate, hate the other candidate, and 20% are undecided in the middle. And so the game has always been played, you've heard it all your life, Jason, it's who can get in there and win the swing voter, that middle vote.
Yeah.
It's not going to be that way this time.
Yeah.
This time, you can go to your mall or up and down your street, if you don't believe me, and just ask for your own self. Ask the question to your friends up and down the mall. And you're going to find that with President Trump, most people are going to love him or hate him. You're going to find very few that don't know.
Right. He's a polarizing character.
Yes. Now, that brings this race to a soft base vote. 40% of both parties is called hard base. Those are people that are going to come out and vote if it's an earthquake.
Right.
But 60% are what's called soft base. Yes, they're for Trump, but they're not for a Democrat, so they're for Trump. I mean, a million reasons why they're sort of for Trump. But you can't guarantee they'll come out and vote. And whichever side gets more of their soft base to come out and vote is going to win that election, such as the example in Louisiana.
Larry, I want to mention that I just brought up a New York Times map of the 2016 presidential election in Louisiana, and it's heavily red. I have spent some time in Louisiana working on movies and living there for a few months, and it's definitely a conservative state. Baton Rouge, New Orleans, Shreveport, the major cities are surprisingly blue, but Hillary Clinton got pretty trounced in Louisiana. It was popular vote looks like 1 million, almost 1.2 million for the president, and only 780,000 for the Queen of Mean. She lost 58.1 to 38.4 in the state of Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. So what that tells you is what I've been trying to tell everybody. Her 38%, is that not marginally close to 40%?
It is.
Now, the rest, that 40% showed up and voted for just like they are supposed to. But because Hillary was such an awful candidate in many ways, from being corrupt to being mean to being all these things,
Yep.
she could not excite the soft base in the Democratic Party. She just couldn't. And as you pointed out, Louisiana comes from a part of the country where in our days when I was growing up, more people were Democrat than there were Republicans. You couldn't find a Republican in Arkansas when I was growing up.
Huh.
But we were conservative.
Right. Different Democratic Party then.
Yes. And Hillary doesn't fit the bill for a conservative, whether you call yourself a Democrat or a pumpkin.
Mm-hmm.
So you see right there, you've got a classic example of the 40% hard base. They will come out. They will do what they're supposed to do. But it's that soft base that you've got to motivate.
Yeah. Yeah. And the boy 26 points out that the illegal, undocumented citizens who are voting around the country present a substantial problem.
Yes. And I think you see in Louisiana, why was President Trump only able to get 31% of his hard base to vote? And I think that comes, to be honest, I think that comes from the disillusionment that's created by all of this media stuff against him. Look, no man on earth could go through what President Trump goes through in our media daily. Yeah. No man could go through what he goes through daily with the smears, the accusations. This weekend, Adam Schiff called the President of the United States. Now, this is the Speaker of the House, the head of that committee, called the President an imposter. An imposter.
What does Adam Schiff suggest the President is impersonating?
I have no idea.
Adam Schiff is such an idiot, Larry. It's unbelievable.
Well, he's an idiot, but it's working.
Yeah.
And it's simply what Goebbels proved and Hitler. If you keep telling the same lie over and over again, eventually it becomes true. And you're seeing it right here in America.
Yeah.
People get tired of hearing all of these things about Trump, even if you're inclined to be with him, even if the track record of him being president is impressive. Guess what? After a while, you kind of get to the point where, maybe if there's this much smoke, there's got to be fire somewhere,
Yeah.
And then when you add to that, he's got the New York attitude and presentation of himself, right?
Some people
and
don't like that.
To many of the southern states, to many of the southern states, his brashness is not appreciated as much as it is where you're from.
Yep. That's true.
So now you see why, Jason, I said today's program, I hope people will find it to be very important. Because it's the clue to what's coming, guys. It's the clue. Yes, there will be indictments from Starr. Yes, there will be.
From Barr.
Barr, I'm sorry. Excuse me.
Freudian slip.
Yes, there will be indictments. Yes, Soros is amassing a program throughout the country to put in local prosecutors, judges, and sheriffs. Why? That's step one in submission. Look, you come into a state, you get 3 or 4 local prosecutors elected with the sheriff and crooked judges, etc. Now, when somebody stands up in the future, comes out against whomever or stands up for Trump or whatever, You see now what they can do to them. They can accuse them of anything in the world and prosecute them.
Right.
And just by prosecuting them, they destroy them.
Right.
Even if they haven't even remotely been connected to the crime, when the news media every day tells you that Joe Blow robbed baby clothes on the weekend,
Yep.
every week, part-time, guess what? Eventually people start to believe it, not to mention the fact that look at the money it costs to defend yourself. The minute you're charged, you're ruined. You're destroyed if you get, and you don't go to jail and you're found innocent, you're still destroyed.
Well, and not only that, Larry, even if you're able to defend yourself pro se, as I'm doing in the civil litigation that's been brought against me, it uses so much of your time, it takes away from your normal business, your productivity, your personal life. It's a really sinister, insidious thing, this lawfare. It's chipping away at people's lives.
And you do 3 or 4 people in a state with high visibility, you destroy 3 or 4, maybe 5 people in an entire state that way.
Yeah.
Nobody else in the state's going to dare to stand up.
Right, it calms people down.
That, my friend, is submission.
Yeah. Well, and Larry, that's what they're trying to do with me. They're trying to say, if you want to come out on social media and broadcast the truth, we're going to sue you, and we're going to sue you multiple times. And it doesn't matter if what we say is true or not. You're going to be in court for years. It's been 2 years already that this has been going on. And this is how they do it.
Yep. And don't doubt that you're being used as an example.
Oh, I know, but, you know.
Because very, very few independent programmers like yourself, which is one of the reasons I just beg people to support this program.
Thank you.
Crowdsource the Truth, is because there are so very few out there that are subscriber funded, supported. But you know, they're making an example out of Jason. That you come out and do this could happen to you or will happen to you.
Right.
And all of a sudden, even though these other program people haven't been contacted, haven't been sued, or none of that yet, it weighs heavy, Jason, on their minds.
Oh, I know. But I'll tell you this, Larry.
It changes their planning.
Well, you're right. For now it does, but we're not at the end of this story yet. And as Richard Pryor famously said, I ain't dead yet. So we're going to see who gets made an example of. I hope, Larry, that people will visit your webpage at nicholslive.com and click on the donate tab to send you some money either on PayPal using your Nichols Live at AOL email address, or by sticking some actual money in an envelope and mailing it to you there in Conway. People can do that. They can also support this program in a variety of ways. Really, the best way to do it is by joining us on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, because that not only helps keep the show sustainable and makes sure that the information that you're getting isn't funded by some outside giant corporation or some billionaire like George Soros who has an agenda. This is micro sponsorship from each of you, the viewers, and it's more important than ever that we have your support, not just for Crowdsource the Truth, but for the individual guests that come on and share this information, like Larry Nichols. Larry gave us an analysis today. I mean, Larry, everything that you said makes sense. I don't see how anyone can say that you're lying about something, even if they doubt a source that you reference or whatever. You've just given us an analysis that is derived from your decades of experience in Washington, D.C. and dealing with elections and dealing with these people. So I, for one, find your input invaluable, and I hope that our viewers will go over to your webpage and show you that they want to see you coming back week after week. They want to make sure that you know that you have their support, and people can do that with nicholslive at AOL.com via PayPal, or send Larry a sponsorship payment in Conway, Arkansas. Larry, we're just about out of time.
Jason, let me say to the folks, there have been a few that have sent help and support. Very gracious letters, by the way. So, folks, your help is needed if you can. But again, I wish to put out this request. if you only have money enough, say this month, to help crowdsource the truth or me, as much as I need the money, I must tell you, it's that important to me. Please support crowdsource the truth first. If there's anything left, yes to me. But Jason, your program, I mean, the stuff we talked about here, it doesn't get out anywhere.
Yeah. Larry, I really appreciate you saying that, Larry. It's kind of you, and I appreciate you coming on the show every week. You've helped me create a very important show here, and I can't stress enough how we wouldn't have this without you, Larry. So people will be looking forward to what comes down the pike next, and we'll see you next Tuesday. If something really important happens, we might even have another conversation sooner. But for now, Larry, we're going to say good evening, and I hope everybody will tune in tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern on patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth and subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth. We've got more pain with Mike Moore of True Pundit, and we're going to be playing more video from the testimony of the witness who alleges he was raped by Bill Clinton at the age of 10. So don't miss that at 8 p.m. Larry, I'll speak to you soon.
Sounds great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody, for watching.